Admiral Zixthara flexed her forearms in frustration as she studied the tactical hologram floating before her command throne. Her crystalline exoskeleton clicked rhythmically, a nervous habit she'd developed during her 3 centuries of military service across 17 different star systems. Never, in all her campaigns against the Void Crawlers, the Silicon Confederacy, or even the dreaded Psionic Collective, had she encountered anything quite as baffling as humanity's latest weapon. "Show me the footage again," she commanded, her translator converting her harmonic speech patterns into standard galactic common. Lieutenant Vailnock, a young Andromedan with nervous blue tentacles, manipulated the holographic controls. The battle scene materialized in 3-dimensional glory. The human fleet positioned defensively around Earth's moon, while Zixthara's own hegemony armada approached in perfect formation. Then it began. From the human vessels, instead of the expected plasma cannons, particle beams, or antimatter torpedoes, came something else entirely. Thousands upon thousands of small projectiles launched toward the hegemony fleet. At first, Zixthara had assumed they were some form of advanced kinetic bombardment until the projectiles began to move. "Freeze the image there," she ordered. The hologram stopped, showing one of the projectiles in perfect detail. It was roughly humanoid in shape, wearing what appeared to be a primitive pressure suit, and was moving. Actually moving through space under its own power, carrying what looked like an absurdly small chemical explosive. "These are soldiers." Vailnock's tentacles turned pale green with confusion. Individual biological units? Firing themselves into space? Zixthara's mandibles clicked in what her species considered deep thought. Every military academy in the galaxy taught the same fundamental principle. Biological entities were far too valuable and fragile to be used as direct projectiles. They belonged safely inside heavily armored vessels, protected by shields and life support systems. The very concept of firing living beings at an enemy was not just tactically unsound, it was absolutely insane. "They call them Space Marines," reported Intelligence Officer Mordaunt from his station. "Our Xenobiology Division analyzed the recovered remains from Sector 7. Pure baseline humans, no genetic modifications, no cybernetic enhancements, no psionic abilities. Just flesh and bone in metal suits." "And they're winning," Zixthara added grimly. That was the part that defied all military logic. These ridiculous human projectiles were somehow devastating her fleet. In the first engagement, she'd lost 3 heavy cruisers and a dreadnought to what amounted to biological missiles with attitude problems. "Admiral," Communications Officer Thishra interrupted, "we're receiving another transmission from the human fleet commander." On screen, the hologram shifted to show Admiral Patricia Iron Fist Rodriguez, the human fleet commander whose reputation had grown legendary among hegemony forces in just 6 months of conflict. She stood on her bridge wearing a simple uniform, looking ridiculously small and fragile compared to the towering hegemony officers around Zixthara. Admiral Zixthara Rodriguez began with that irritating human custom of showing teeth, apparently a sign of friendliness, though it looked predatory to most species. "I trust you've had time to review our latest tactical demonstration. I'm calling to offer you one final chance to withdraw your forces from this system." Zixthara leaned forward. "Your tactics are illogical, Admiral Rodriguez. You're sacrificing sentient beings as projectiles. It's wasteful and inefficient." Rodriguez's expression shifted to something Zixthara had learned to recognize as amusement. "You think we're sacrificing them? Admiral, those Marines aren't missiles. They're boarding parties." The transmission cut off, leaving Zixthara staring at empty space. Boarding parties? But that was impossible. The distances involved, the radiation, the lack of life support during transit. "Admiral," Vailnock's voice cracked with panic. Emergency signals from the Nexus Prime. They're reporting intruders on board. Multiple breaches across decks 7 through 23. Zix Thara's blood turned to ice. How? Our shields were... The shields were designed to stop projectiles and energy weapons, Mordaunt reported, his voice hollow with realization. Not individual soldiers. The humans fired their troops directly through our shield matrices. The reports began flooding in from across the fleet. The human projectiles weren't dying on impact, they were landing on hull surfaces, cutting through airlocks, and fighting their way inside with nothing but individual weapons and portable oxygen supplies. It was madness, but it was working. "Sir," Thysra announced, "the Nexus Prime is requesting immediate evacuation. The intruders have reached the command deck." On the tactical display, Zix Thara watched as her most powerful dreadnought's lights began flickering. Within minutes, the massive vessel changed course and began broadcasting human identification codes. "They're not trying to destroy our ships," she whispered in dawning horror. "They're capturing them." Fleet Captain Morvex, Zix Thara's chief tactical advisor, spoke what they were all thinking. A warrior species that willingly launches itself into the void without spacecraft, fights in vacuum, and captures enemy vessels by force of arms alone. "Admiral, we may have underestimated humanity's strategic doctrine." Zix Thara looked around her command center at the faces of her officers, each representing different species from across the hegemony, all united in their complete bafflement at human military tactics. "Stand down all weapons," she commanded finally. "Open a channel to Admiral Rodriguez." When the human appeared on screen again, she was no longer smiling. "Admiral Zix Thara, I trust you've reconsidered our offer. Your weapon," Zix Thara said slowly, "is not the explosive devices your soldiers carry. It's the soldiers themselves." Rodriguez nodded approvingly. "Every Marine is a weapon, Admiral. And unlike missiles or energy beams, weapons that can think, adapt, and make decisions tend to be remarkably effective." "This is the stupidest weapon I've ever seen," Zix Thara admitted. "And that's precisely why it works." "Stupid like a fox," Rodriguez replied with another predatory grin. "Now, about that withdrawal." As Zix Thara gave the orders to retreat, she made a mental note to update all hegemony tactical manuals. Apparently, the universe still had surprises to offer, even if those surprises came in the form of humans shooting themselves at enemy starships with nothing but determination and explosives. Sometimes, the most illogical strategy was the most effective one.